U.S. Navy has always been the iron will of a proud and mighty nation pushing forward through the currents and
Today, we will descend into the very heart of the symbol of two massive floating steel structures that are rewriting the global balance of power. On one side is a 100,000-ton behemoth, the USS Gerald R. This incredible nuclear-powered ship cost over $13 billion, the pinnacle of American power. On the other side is China's third and most advanced aircraft carrier, commanding the world's largest navy, the Fujian. This ship is China's pride and joy. The confrontation between Gerald R and Fujian is not a ship comparison. It offers a preview of who will be the future master of the Pacific, and perhaps the entire world. So what would really happen if these two titans faced each other in the middle of the ocean? But wait, there's something missing in the picture, isn't there? The other superpower claiming to be the world's, constantly challenging the US at every opportunity. Yes, I'm talking about Vladimir Putin and his navy. So, where do Putin's naval forces stand in this league of giants? Can they assist their Chinese ally? Or will this be another moment where he and the Russian people face harsh realities? Today, as we analyze these two superships belonging to the US and China, we will also see how an empire is being pushed aside. If you're ready, let's begin. First, let's meet the champion, the USS Gerald R. This is the US Navy's newest and most expensive warship. Theoretically, the Gerald R was designed to replace the previous Nimitz-class ships and guarantee American naval supremacy for another 50 years. Thanks to its two A-1B nuclear reactors, it can remain at sea for decades without needing to refuel. With over 4,500 crew members and more than 75 aircraft, we're talking about a floating city, a floating airbase. But even that description of an airbase doesn't do it justice. This ship alone carries more lethal firepower than the combined air forces of many countries. Consider the more than 75 fighter jets carried by the USS Gerald R, F/A-18 Super Hornets, the steel fist of air-to-air and air-to-ground missions, EA-18G Growlers. These are not just fighter jets, they are electronic warfare machines. They are there to blind enemy radars and jam communications. And most importantly, the E-2D Hawkeye. These mini AWACS aircraft are the ship's eyes and brain, seeing hundreds of kilometers beyond it. Add to that the submarine-hunting MH-60 Seahawk helicopters and the logistical giants. As we can see, the USS Gerald R itself is protected like a fortress. The evolved Sea Sparrow missile, ESSM, and RAM missiles serve as the final defense line, designed to destroy any incoming missile or aircraft. The Phalanx CIWS systems operate like robotic Gatling guns, capable of firing thousands of rounds per second. And this is just the ship itself. Ford's true strength lies in never being alone. It is the heart of an aircraft carrier strike group. Gerald R is surrounded by Arleigh Burke-class destroyers. Each of these escort ships has over 90 vertical launch cells. What's inside them? Hundreds of Tomahawk cruise missiles with a range of over 1,000 miles and advanced air defense missiles. So yes, this 100,000-ton behemoth, powered by two nuclear reactors providing unlimited energy, can remain at any point in the ocean for weeks on end. At the same time, the Ford can carry an immense air power and, on its own, could wipe a medium-sized country off the map. This ship is, in theory, the most perfect war machine for the United States. In short, the Ford emerges as an incredibly powerful, nuclear-powered behemoth. Now let's look at the other side of the coin, Beijing. China's first two aircraft carriers, Liaoning and Shandong, were actually ski-jump ships based on Soviet designs. This ramp severely limits the takeoff weight of aircraft. In other words, they cannot take off with a full load of weapons and fuel. But Fujian, this ship, is considered a completely different game. With a displacement of over 80,000 tons, Fujian is China's first CATOBAR, or catapult-assisted takeoff aircraft carrier. This displacement is, of course, lower than that of the USS Gerald R, but Fujian is still seen as a significant risk factor for the US. And now, brace yourselves. What catapult system does Fujian use? Steam? Of course not. China skipped steam technology entirely and went straight to EMALS technology, which even the Americans haven't fully mastered. This is seen as an incredible gamble for Beijing. If China manages to operate EMALS more reliably than the Americans, they will have achieved a technological revolution. If they fail, they will also have an 80,000-ton floating problem. So why is Fujian so important? There are two reasons. One reason is the KJ-600. This is China's Airborne Early Warning and Control Aircraft, or AWACS. It was impossible for it to take off from a ski ramp. But with EMALS, Fujian can now send its own observation tower hundreds of kilometers away. The second reason is the J-35. This is described as China's new generation stealth fighter jet. A catapult was essential for it to take off fully loaded. In other words, Fujian is a critical step in transforming the Chinese Navy from a coastal security force into a power capable of competing with the US in the open oceans. However, Fujian also has a major weakness. That weakness is its power source. While the USS Gerald R has unlimited range thanks to its nuclear reactors, Fujian operates on conventional power. Think of it like a giant diesel engine. It needs constant refueling. This ties it to a logistical chain that limits its range and endurance. That's the whole picture. On one side, the US nuclear giant USS Gerald R. On the other, the ambitious but conventionally powered Fujian. So, as we mentioned in the opening of the video, where does Putin fit into this equation? Actually, we need to elaborate a bit more on Putin's role in the China-US rivalry here. What can Putin, who has pledged unlimited friendship to China, send to help his ally Fujian? The answer is nothing. Russia has one aircraft carrier on paper, that is Admiral Kuznetsov. But even calling it a ship is considered flattering. This ship is described more as an international embarrassment than a weapon of war. Look, the 58,600-ton Kuznetsov is much smaller than both the 100,000-ton USS Gerald R and the 80,000-ton Fujian. While Ford and Fujian are discussing EMALS, Kuznetsov has a ski jump system like China's first ships. But the real comedy is the ship itself. This ship breaks down so often that it had to travel with a tugboat alongside it the entire journey to Syria, because it was known that its engines would fail en route. Furthermore, the fuel used by the Kuznetsov, namely diesel, is of such poor quality that NATO pilots mocked it because of the black cloud of smoke it left behind. So, where is this ship named Kuznetsov, Russia's only support element for China now? Of course, it is still undergoing modernization, but this modernization is seen as a chain of disasters. First, the floating dock on which the ship was resting sank. Then a crane collapsed, opening a huge hole in the deck. Then, two major fires broke out on the ship, resulting in loss of life. In other words, Putin has no aircraft carrier to send to China for assistance. Putin's navy is not an open sea power, but a rusty coastal security force. The superpower story, told to the Russian people, is dissipating into thin air, like the black smoke coming out of this ship's funnel. Putin is not a player in this fight. He is seen as a spectator sitting on the sidelines, waiting to be called into the game but having forgotten his uniform at home. Let's get to the real question. If these two ships faced each other, who would win? Currently, the advantage is thought to lie with the USS Ford. One reason for this is experience. The U.S. Navy has been operating aircraft carriers for 80 years. Its pilots are among the best in the world. China, on the other hand, has only just begun this endeavor. Its experience with catapult launches is virtually non-existent. The second reason to say that Gerald R has an advantage over Fujian is the concept of power. That is, nuclear power. Ford can travel at high speeds, almost non-stop for 20 years, wherever it wants. Fujian, on the other hand, has to wait for fuel ships. Another area where the Ford aircraft carrier overshadows Fujian is the air fleet, which we have focused on quite a bit. The combination of FA-18 Super Hornets, EA-18G Growler electronic warfare aircraft, and E-2D Hawkeye AWACS is a system that has proven itself in combat. More than 75 fighter jets can be launched faster with 4 catapults compared to 3, if EMALS works. Of course, Fujian has its strengths too. One of these is the concept of innovation. Fujian is a newer design. Perhaps they have learned from the US's EMALS mistakes. Another area where Fujian has an advantage is the concept of focused threat. Fujian's air fleet, which includes the J-35 and KJ-600, is specifically designed to strike American ships. Another point we can mention regarding Fujian's advantage is the element of uncertainty. The US does not know exactly what China is capable of. This could create an element of surprise. But at the end of the day, an aircraft carrier does not fight alone. It has an attack group protecting it. Destroyers, cruisers, submarines. And here's the interesting part. China is rapidly advancing in this area as well. They are producing some of the world's most advanced destroyers, such as the Type 055. They have even started installing EMALS on their amphibious ships. The newly launched Type 076 Sichuan is described as an amphibious ship capable of launching both helicopters and UAVs. So, as we can see, China's naval power is growing at an incredible rate. What do you think Putin is thinking when he looks at this picture? China, which the Russian leader calls his unlimited friend, has gone from 0 to 3 aircraft carriers in just 10 years, and a fourth, said to be nuclear, is on the way. Putin's own navy, however, cannot even operate a single ship. China has left Putin so far behind technologically that Russia is no longer even the junior partner in this alliance. It has fallen to the position of merely a raw materials supplier. So far, we have described the Pacific-centered war of the giants. But now I will take you to a much more surprising place, the Caribbean. Do you know where the USS Gerald R. Ford, America's most advanced, most expensive ship, which is supposed to deter China and Russia, was recently deployed? To the U.S. Southern Command USSOUTHCOM region, that is, the Caribbean. So what was the official reason? According to the Pentagon statement, to combat transnational criminal organizations. Let me repeat, a $13 billion, 100,000-ton nuclear supercarrier was sent to catch drug smugglers. This mission seems a bit confusing. This is about sending a message in diplomacy. The arrival of the USS Gerald Ford in the Caribbean coincided with the deployment of B-1 and B-52 bombers, F-35s, and thousands of troops to the region. So, who is the target in the Caribbean? Venezuela, of course. That is, Nicolas Maduro. So who is Maduro? Putin's last and most important ally in the Western Hemisphere. This is where all the pieces come together. The US is taking its most advanced aircraft carrier and placing it right under the nose of Putin's closest ally in his own backyard. This is an incredible show of force, a flex, demonstrating that the US is not so afraid of China and Russia, and is even willing to use its most valuable asset for policing purposes. So, what did Maduro, cornered, do? According to documents obtained by the Washington Post, Maduro is said to have written letters to Russia, China, and Iran in desperation. He was begging for military aid. Radars, drones, missiles. Maduro called on Putin and Xi Jinping to take a united stand against US aggression. So what did Putin do? Did he send his navy to protect his ally? No! As we mentioned, Putin has no navy left to send. This navy is practically stuck in Ukraine. The most tragicomic aspect of this is as follows. The state of the Russian weapons that Maduro trusted has also been revealed. It is claimed that a former Venezuelan military official spoke to US media sources. You know what he said about the Russian-made Sukhoi Su-30 Mk-2 fighter jets the country possesses? They are complete junk and pure scrap. Maduro is trying to stand up to the world's most advanced aircraft carrier, the USS Gerald R. Ford, with the junk weapons he got from Putin. See? The competition between the USS Ford and China's Fujian ship shows us the two poles of the new world. The US, with its technological problems, and China, which is rapidly rising. Vladimir Putin is not in this picture. Putin has been completely erased from this equation. His ally, China, has left him far behind technologically. Fujian's EMALS makes Russia's rusting Kuznetsov look like a museum piece. The rival US side is so unconcerned about it that it is using its best ship to threaten Putin's ally, Maduro. This tells Putin, your navy is so insignificant that I don't even need to assign a ship against you. On the other hand, his ally Maduro has realized that Putin's protection is worthless. He is experiencing the harsh reality that the weapons Putin sold him are junk. Putin's actions reveal one truth to his own people and allies. Russia is not the superpower it promised to be. The Russian army is bogged down on land, and its navy, especially Admiral Kuznetsov, is rusting at sea. So, considering all these details, the real battle between Ford and Fujian will take place in the Pacific. But the first and biggest loser in this battle is Vladimir Putin, who cannot open up to the ocean, sells scrap to his allies, and is completely excluded from the game in the Caribbean. The naval competition between the US and China may also lead to important signs emerging over Taiwan, as it did in the Caribbean. So pitting the USS Gerald R against Fujian will also shed light on scenarios for what will happen in the Pacific. And there is only one place in the Pacific where the course of this $13 billion ship and the 80,000-ton Chinese Dragon will intersect: Taiwan. Now, let's take the scenario from the Caribbean and move it to the real battlefield. Let's say Beijing says, "We won't wait any longer," and decides to take that final step toward Taiwan. When that happens, the first call in Washington will likely ask where the nearest aircraft carrier group is. And that group will most likely be the USS Gerald R. Here, those details that were insignificant in the Caribbean take on deadly importance in the Pacific. We mentioned Fujian's biggest weakness, didn't we? Conventional power. So it's not nuclear. It runs on diesel engines and needs constant fuel. The Ford, on the other hand, has almost unlimited range thanks to its nuclear reactors. But in the Taiwan scenario, this advantage is reversed. Why? Because Fujian is the home team here. This ship will be fighting right off its own coast in such a scenario. It has the massive logistical network of mainland China behind it. Refueling is not a problem for it. But the USS Gerald R. This ship is deployed in such a scenario. Therefore, Gerald has to cross the ocean and protect a refueling line thousands of kilometers long. And worse, Ford will have to try to enter China's backyard. This is very critical. China hasn't just spent the last 20 years building Fujian. It has prepared a death trap to protect that ship and, more importantly, to keep Ford out. They call this anti-access/area denial. This means a shield consisting of thousands of ballistic missiles launched from land, capable of reaching hypersonic speeds, and known as aircraft carrier killers. I'm talking about the DF-21D and DF-26 missiles. These missiles are designed to take out a Ford-class ship with a single strike. So, to get close to Taiwan, the Ford will first have to get through this missile hell. Fujian, meanwhile, will be waiting safely behind this shield. Its job is to hunt down any F-35s or Super Hornets that manage to penetrate the shield. So, the USS Gerald R has a very difficult task ahead. Now, let's ask that question again. Where is Putin's boundless friendship in this terrifying high-tech scenario? What will Putin do when his ally China enters a life-and-death battle with the world superpower, the US? We must not forget Russia's Pacific Fleet. However, this fleet only exists on paper. The Russian people are told that this fleet is powerful. Let's take a look at that power. The flagship of the Russian Pacific Fleet is a Slava-class cruiser called the Varyag. Does that name ring a bell? Yes. The Varyag is the sister ship of the Moskva, the flagship of the Russian Black Sea Fleet, which Ukraine sent to the bottom of the Black Sea with just 2 Neptune missiles. Same design, same age, same weaknesses. Putin's best surface ship he could send to help China in the Pacific is the twin of a ship sunk by a country like Ukraine, which doesn't even have a navy. How much can this ship withstand against the FA-18S of the USS Gerald R. or the Tomahawk missiles of an Arleigh Burke destroyer? This isn't assistance. It's a suicide mission. This is precisely the kind of support Putin can offer China. So, a rusty aircraft carrier and an admiral ship ready to sink. This is the clearest picture of how Putin and his allies are in trouble. So, the USS Gerald R is once again facing China, this time in Taiwan. And it doesn't seem very likely, at least for now, that Beijing will launch a surprise attack on Ford, and the other US aircraft and naval ships facing Taiwan does not seem very likely, at least for now. In short, the US continues to exert pressure at sea against China, even with Russia's presence. The USS Gerald R is the main pillar of this pressure. Neither China's Fujian nor Russia's naval power has the potential to confront the US, which has 11 aircraft carriers. So, what are your thoughts on this matter? Your opinions are very valuable to us. Therefore, please don't forget to share your comments. Thank you for watching. We hope to see you in the next video.